Greetings gobbos and welcome to Codex Compliant.
Today, we're playing a game for children.
Games Workshop has had a long history of producing standalone board games alongside its more well-known collectible miniature war games. Some of the most famous of these are Hero Quest and Space Crusade that they produced in conjunction with Milton Bradley,
Plasma Gun! Dreadnought!
but there's many more, often set within one of the Warhammer settings, meaning that it's not uncommon for people to buy some of those purely because it's technically cheaper than buying the minis used in the game separately. I wonder what percentage of the people who bought Assassinorum Execution Force actually played it, for example. But I digress. In 1989, adverts showed up in White Dwarf for 4 simple board games aimed at a younger audience, with that kind of gross-out, Boglin-esque aesthetic that kids love, all about Trolls and Goblins. These games were Oi Dat's My Leg, Trolls in the Pantry, Hungry Troll and the Gobbos, and Squelch. They were all designed by Andy Jones, and as far as we're aware, they all shared the same art team too. That being cover art by Fangorn, aka Chris Baker, the graphics design and line art by Bill Sedgwick, and colours by Gary Chalk. The games also all came with a cassette tape, which wasn't actually used in the game, but we'll get back to that later.
These games were released around September of 1989, meaning they were about at the same time as things like the first edition of Space Hulk and early Epic, if you were wanting an idea of where GW was at the time. The games were sold for $5.99 each, but they do not cost that anymore. You see, we've been trying to pick up one of them for a while so that we could make this video, but the prices people are asking for them on eBay were just silly. Most we've seen were over 100 quid, so they eluded us. That is, until a kind person DM'd us a link to a listing on the Oxfam site for one costing just over a tenner, which is much more like it. So thank you, Bob. We are now the proud owners of Oi Dat's My Leg, the trollsome game of bodybuilding.
Even before we get to the game itself, it's really quite neat to see how un-Games Workshop this looks. If it didn't have their name on it, I probably wouldn't have guessed that it was from the folks that made Warhammer, especially considering that both Chalk and Baker's other artwork for GW was very much not like this. Although it's very much par for the course for Bill Sedgwick, since he was the artist behind White Dwarf's comic Gobbledygook. Honestly, it would have been weird if they hadn't gotten him for this. He was their resident cartoon goblin guy, after all. We made a whole video about that if you want to know more.
Also, this is not really important, but we feel the need to tell you all this. The cover artist, Chris Baker, would go on to do a bunch of concept art and storyboards for movies, like Skyfall, The Corpse Bride, AI, and even, of all things, the erotic drama Eyes Wide Shut. Going from goblins to Venetian mask orgies is one hell of a career arc. Gotta respect that.
One final tangent before we get into it. We want to answer a question that we're sure some of you have. Are the Troll games Warhammer games? Do they take place in the Warhammer universe? The answer is not really, but... So after first accepting that none of this is real and does not, on a fundamental level, matter, though the trolls and goblins in these games are fairly generic and could come from pretty much any setting containing them, well, anywhere apart from the folklore the original concepts come from, anyway. But at least one of the games, Squelch, does contain squiggly beasts, otherwise known as squigs, and those are firmly a Warhammer thing, tying them to the setting, albeit tenuously. So yeah, why not? These games are canon now. Canon in the way that Blood Bowl is canon. All that aside though, I suppose we should, finally, actually take a look at the game.
Trolls are stupid. I mean, really, really thick. Quite often, they leave bits of themselves lying around in troll holes. A troll almost never notices he has lost a leg or even his head. He soon grows a new one anyway, so he doesn't care 2 hoots.
Oi Dat's My Leg is a pretty standard 2 to 4 player board game where you roll dice to move your goblin around the board and you get to roll again on a 6. The main aim being to collect all the parts for 2 whole trolls. You do this by landing on spaces which give you a card from the troll hole. The troll hole. These cards are either the head, body or legs of a troll, and they're all drawn in a way that they all fit together to create a unique monstrosity. Sometimes when you land on a space, there'll be caveats to getting a bit, like missing a turn. As well as troll bits, there's also junk cards in the bits pile, which you can use to fill in a blank space on another player's uncompleted troll. They must then get to the scrapyard, which doubles as a discard pile, to get rid of it so that they can actually complete that troll. Then there's the Oi That's My cards, which let you steal cards from any other player's uncompleted troll. So you can turn to the person next to you, gaze deeply into their eyes and shout, "Oi, that's my body," at them, and take a body card that they have. Strictly speaking, the shouting is not absolutely mandatory for the game to function, but I do feel that you're going against the spirit of it by not doing so.
You can also steal cards from other players by landing on the same space as them. Again, you can't steal from a completed troll, but this time you don't have to shout in their face. You also don't have to follow the exact same path, as the board is made of 3 loops, and although you can only go one way around them, you can pick which way to go on the junctions where they meet, and that's pretty important because of the one thing we haven't mentioned yet. The troll. A one-legged troll roams around the middle loop of the board, orbiting the rim of the troll hole, if you will. After everyone has had a turn, someone rolls to see how far he moves. If he lands on a space with a player on it, then the player loses any bits that aren't part of a complete troll and gets tossed into the troll trap, where they must stay until they roll a 5 or a 6. And since the central loop is the most flush with spaces that give you cards, there's a gamble there. Stay on the safer parts of the board or risk getting accosted by a troll for the chance of extra legs. There's only 6 spaces in that central loop too, so none of them are ever actually safe. And there's spaces in there where you have to miss a turn or the troll gets an extra turn. Fortune may favour the brave, but that fortune might be short-lived.
And yeah, that's more or less it. The game is over once a player completes 2 whole trolls. It's not complicated, and who wins is mostly luck, but that means you can pick it up pretty quickly. It is meant for children after all. There are definitely some parts that feel like they could have used a little bit of refinement. For example, it's incredibly easy to end up in the troll trap and then just not roll a 5 or a 6 for the rest of the game while the other players are free to speed ahead of you. And by that I mean it's very easy for me to end up in the troll trap every time for most of the game. Although my inability to roll 5s or 6s when I need to aside, that does highlight that the mechanic could do with tweaking, especially when only playing with 2 players, since then it basically becomes a 1-player game when a player ends up in the troll trap. It's less bad with the full 4 players, since at least 3 other people are still playing against each other, but it's still a pretty boring time for the person in troll jail. It's something that you can house rule your way around if you like, even if it's just something as simple as putting a hard limit on how many turns you're stuck in there. But it's definitely an issue and makes the game less fun than it should be. Still, we've played the game enough times to get the appeal. It's not fantastic or anything, but we've absolutely played worse. But you little deviants want to hear all about the cassette tape, don't you? Okay, you've been good.
All of these games came with a cassette tape featuring some unique songs. Trollish tunes, they call them. Sadly, our copy did not come with the cassette, but that's okay because we don't actually have a cassette player anymore anyway. However, the previous owner of our copy, legend that they were, encoded at least one side of the tape to a CDR and popped that in the box, meaning that we can now share this.
And while they were up, they were up. And while they were down, they were down. And when they were near, they were up, not down. You can see us underpound.
And this.
10 green gobbles sitting in the mud, and if 1 green gobble should vanish with a 39 green gobbles sitting in the mud.
Brings a tear to your eye, doesn't it? To be fair, a few of the songs from these tapes are floating around the internet already. It might be all of them, honestly, we're not sure how many individual songs there were. They're all kind of the same... Can we call this a genre? Trollcore? Goblin punk? Avant-garde post-troll? It's kind of hard to figure out anything concrete about the production of these songs, other than a lot of claims that the voices that you're hearing are a bunch of GW staff, and since Andy Jones is in the credits, it's likely he's one of them. from our cursory amount of digging, there's a non-zero chance that one of the people recording it might have gone on to be a tech for the Kaiser Chiefs, and I don't really know what to do with that information if that's true. I suppose we could have sent some emails to try and figure out some of this stuff, but I don't know, sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of mystery about things. Hello, Editing Wib here. After recording that bit, I stumbled upon a Tech Raptor interview with Andy Jones that confirmed that, yes, future Kaiser Chiefs tech Roger Lyons did indeed work on those troll tapes. Still don't know what to do with that information, but now you know as well. What we can tell you for a fact is that we have confirmed stories of GW's staff playing the tapes in store to torment the customers for one reason or another. It's the end of the day and people aren't leaving? Get the trollish tunes out.
So when I'm down in the sun, when the party's just I'll take my socks off.
But how did people at the time like Oi Dat's My Leg? Well, honestly, it's hard to say. We weren't able to find any contemporary reviews, but in the present day it's only got a 4.5 out of 10 on BoardGameGeek.com. Which is not amazing. Although from what we can gather, when kids play it, they tend to have fun with it, which feels like a kind of important metric for a game made for kids, but what do I know? But everyone can agree that the Trollish Tunes tapes are great, truly unrivaled art in their field.
Here we go, here we go, here we go.
Like many of the self-contained games GW made around this time, beyond a couple of ads in White Dwarf, Oi Dat's My Leg and its fellow troll games didn't really get much attention or fanfare from GW when they were released. And the only one that received any extra attention at all was Trolls in the Pantry, which got Zog Off, a new set of rules for the game printed in White Dwarf 117.
If you are able to play Oi Dat's My Leg in the present day, you're not likely to find your new favourite game, unless you really have a thing for being hugely inconvenienced by trolls, in which case you should probably sign up for Twitter. But if you are even slightly interested in GW's history, then you'll probably get a kick out of it for being a time when they tried to make something a little different to the usual. Plus, any game where you can steal your fellow players' legs is gonna have some charm to it. And if you really want to be insufferable about it, being a Games Workshop game means that it's totally something you can bring to Warhammer World to play with your friends, who may or may not be your friends for much longer because you keep doing things like dragging them to Warhammer World and instead of playing Warhammer, you play a children's board game from 1989. So that was Oi, Dat's My Leg.
A game that existed, and we have played. Like and subscribe!
Why are we singing this song? I don't know the words to this song. Oi, I'm hungry. Oh, a gobbo snack. Here we go, here we go, here we go.
Oi, what do you call a fly in a troll's head?
I don't know. What do you call a fly in a troll's head?
A space invader.
Gotta pick my nose. I got a good one.
Oh, there was a hungry troll. He had 10,000 teeth. He kept them in a great big bag to help him with his sums. And when
So we didn't really know where to put this in the video, so I'm just going to record a little thing for the end here. But one of the troll tapes contains a song that's a parody of the 12 Days of Christmas, but it's food instead, because hungry trolls. And one of the foods in the list is a type of British meatball that happens to share its name with a slur for a gay man. So that means that Games Workshop inadvertently puts out a children's game with a homophobic slur in it. So happy Pride, everyone. Yeah.